morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
One of the many things that I just really enjoy about the life Billy and I are blessed to live is saddling my horse up at the barn early in the morning, loading her in the trailer, and heading over to help work cattle at one of our friends' operations, sometimes about an hour's drive away. And as the sun comes up behind us and we're rolling through some of this country's finest ranch lands, I'll have my favorite music playing in the old 7-slot CD player, and quite often there will be some songs from R.W. Hampton. This longtime working cowboy and award-winning entertainer is back this week, and there's a lot more evidence that he is cowboy to the core.
Trying to keep your hat on, your eyes from getting knocked out, and then all of a sudden there's a little clearing and you make one swing and you throw and you set your horse down, you know.
And Baxter Black has a commentary that this week really needs to be heard.
Well, I was not old enough to be his father, but I said, no, they don't. I lectured him on mutual respect, decency, chivalry, and the cowboy way.
And a lot of interesting items show up on this week's Rangeland News.
Steer prices crawling back up. They could average about...
About how much? Really? Well, you'll hear how much just a little bit later. And on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, a rider who's not really a rookie wants to know, is it better to ride one-handed with one hand on the reins or one rein in each hand? And she might not realize how complicated my answer is going to be. Roping styles of cowboys across the West will be something that RW and I will discuss, and we may as well start things off with a song he wrote and recorded when he was still drawing wages as a full-time working cowboy.
We were known by folks around as the Wild Bunch. Our trademark was the hell we could raise. We were young and we were wild, running free was our style. We loved the carefree life on the range. We all worked mighty hard for our pay. We'd make 50 miles horseback every day. At the end of the week, we'd all be plenty tired, but never too tired for reckless play. And we'd ride into town on a Saturday night, coming down from the mountains to the plains. We'd start out at a lope and we wouldn't break our stride till the whiskey and the women made us high. Sunrise always came way too early. We'd start the long ride back to the ranch with an ache in our heads and a long day's work ahead. We'd make our way back out to the camp. We were all proud of what we were. We loved the life that we led. We were living for the day, never thinking about tomorrow, and never ever thought that it would end. When we'd ride into town on a Saturday night, coming down from the mountains to the plains, we'd start out at a lope and we wouldn't break our stride till the whiskey and the women made us high. And now I love to look back on it. Those memories bring a tear to my eye, and I'd give all I own to be back there again, and once more together we would ride. And we'd go down into town on a Saturday night, coming down from the mountains to the plains. We'd start out at a lope and we wouldn't break our stride till the whiskey and the women made us high. Till the whiskey and the women made us high.
R.W. and the Wild Bunch. And now the visit with R.W. Hampton continues, and we'll pick it right up where we left off last week.
You cowboyed in probably a little different than where we live. There's usually a tree somewhere close. If I absolutely have to, I can ride up close and get them snubbed to that tree and get it done. But I guess there's a lot of that open range country where you just can't do that.
Well, there is. Yeah, that's true. And then you have to figure out something else. But I have worked in places where that mesquite brush, and you'd try to find a mesquite bush or tree that was big enough, that you could, take a couple of wraps around that and tie him off, and then get off and reset your saddle and cinch him back up and take a deep breath and say, what are we going to do now? Yeah.
One-man doctrine is that's a challenge, and it's avoided on big outfits if possible. But there's the odd situation where if you're sure of your horse and what you can do, you can get her done. And I guess if you can get that cow or whatever it is by the heels first, it makes it a lot easier. But if you even get a head catch, and then you got to go to work yourself, it can be pretty western.
Yeah, Hugh, I worked for an old Matador cowboy one time by the name of George Nixon, and he's long since gone. But he would build him, he called it a big old blocker loop, and he'd throw it sidearm like that. He'd wind it up, and then he'd roll it around, and he could pick up their front feet with it. And he was he dallied some, but he was mainly a hard and fast guy, and he'd just feed those coils up and set his horse down, and he could get so much done. And I could do that every now and then. I never did master it, but he was just an artist at picking up those two front feet. And he learned it on that old Matador ranch growing up. He said when something would run off from the big herd, well, they'd just boil out there and bail a big old loop, pick up their front feet, and stand them on their nose a time or two. And he said, man, they'd just turn around and go right back to the herd. A herd bunch quitter. But boy, what a handy loop to have for a deal like that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Now, do you like a long, soft 60-foot riata, slick horn, and slide your dallies?
You know what? I have roped every which way there is to rope. I've roped on rawhide. I've roped on mulehide. I've roped on rubber. I've tied off hard and fast. I dally on rubber these days. Just me too. There was a time when the guys, we learned it from the Arizona cowboys that came into the Texas Panhandle. They'd take a cotton lead shank or a nylon lariat rope and unravel it, and then take that fuzzy strands and wrap it around your saddle horn. And it was somewhere between mulehide and rubber. It would kind of bite a little bit, but it would slip a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I'm not maybe as wolfy as I used to be, and so I use the rubber horn wraps.
I will explain why there was a lot of blood on the swells of my brand new Bob Kaufman saddle a while back, and R.W. will tell me what I did wrong, and then you'll hear one of his finest songs when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. I'd like to give a big welcome to our newest radio station. We just started on WLSC in Loris, South Carolina at 106.7 FM. And Jack Murphy tells me that there's a lot of horses in South Carolina. And as a matter of fact, one of our favorite YouTube shows, Low Country Cowboys, comes from there. We really enjoy following Richard Boatwright and his family through their days working cattle, starting colts and riding on a big outfit there on the East Coast. Well, as long as good cowboys look after the welfare of cattle with a horse and a rope and a saddle, and there's a poem in that, there will be discussions on various roping styles, and I've tried a few, and some of them haven't worked too well for me, as I was telling R.W. Hampton.
Billy bought me a gift certificate for a custom-made saddle and put it in my Christmas stocking quite a few years ago now. And any specs I wanted with a fellow that we knew out in Alberta, Bob Kaufman, who builds really nice saddles. And he sent it with a mulehide wrapped horn, and Bob's a pretty good roper himself. And he said, you ought to learn to use a long, soft rope and slide your dallies. He said, it's easier on your horse, easier on the stock and everything. And about a month after I got the saddle, it was the first branding we went to, so I didn't put any rubber on the horn, but I just can't handle those. I wish I could. These guys that I watch are artists with these long, soft riatas and these 60-footers, but all those coils and everything, it can take me too long to learn. So I took my regular 40-footer nylon with me, but I had the mule hide on the horn, and they were big, soggy calves. After about 8 or 10 calves, I had so much blood on the swells of my new saddle from my knuckles hitting there that the very next time I put a little rubber around it.
I use about a 45 foot rope, and I think Cactus makes a Rancher special. It's part nylon and part poly, and it's just got a good heavy feel to it. And you know, there's no right or wrong way to rope. A lot of it is adapted to the terrain and where you live. And I know in the mesquite country, this is funny because on the Canadian River got its name because the Kanadas out of Canada came down there to trap beavers. You know,
I never knew. I didn't know.
Yeah, and but anyhow, it's this mesquite country, and so you'll follow a cow brute through the brush, and you'll have your rope and your reins and those brush cuffs, and you go through like this, you know, trying to keep your hat on, your eyes from getting knocked out, and then all of a sudden there's a little clearing, and you make one swing and you throw, and you set your horse down, you know. And that's where the tying off came from, you know. And then you get in more in open country, and you have more an opportunity to jockey your horse around and carry those coils. But I admire all the different styles of cowboying. There's really, like I said, there's no right way. It just happens. It's adapted from the country that you come from. And I have met a few guys. I knew a guy named Rick Bates from Nevada. He could rope any way you wanted to rope. He came from Nevada, and he had a 60-foot rope, and he'd feed those coils and dally, and then when he got in the mesquite brush, he'd take about half of that rope, tie it off the horn, tie the other off the fork of his saddle, and rope hard and fast. He could he was an all-around. He'd worked in every kind of country, you know, and I really admired him for that.
Somehow at this point in the show, I got to play Canadian River Waltz.
There you go. There you go.
Quiet this evening on the old Canadian as I ride out alone. I'm lonely but free, just my pony and me, and the river is singing a song. Got plenty of rain, the grass is growing tall, the river is rolling along. The cattle are fat, the calves looking good, just a laying round waiting for fall. As I ride out on the point of a mesa, I survey all the beauty below. An eagle screams down to his friends on the ground. It's time to be bedding down. That old setting sun paints its colors on the mesas and on the river canyon walls. From somewhere far away, the coyote calls its mate. It's time to be heading home. The moon's a shining bright on the old Canadian as I jog down the canyon for home. I'm lonely but free, just my pony and me, a cowboy at peace with the world. I'm a cowboy at peace with the world.
Beautiful song. I think one of your finest works.
Well, thank you, Hugh. Yeah, the Canadian River starts up in northeastern New Mexico and flows out of New Mexico through the Texas Panhandle and Oklahoma, and then it splits and makes the North and South Canadian. But it's my understanding that the Canadian trappers came down. There was a lot of beaver on that river at one time. It's pretty much just a trickle now, but that's where it got its name, the Canadian River.
You ever come across Kurt Pate, horse trainer from Montana?
I have met him a couple of times. I don't really know him, but I really admire his style of horsemanship. There's Craig Cameron, Kurt Pate, Martin Black, and there's more. But to me, I call them cowboy clinicians. They teach you how to do. They teach you things about your horse and how to work with your horse so you can go and do a job.
Yeah. The reason I brought up Kurt's name is I just did a couple of clinics with him in Edmonton at just before the Canadian Finals Rodeo, and he can rope left-handed as well as right-handed, and I don't know which way is natural for him.
I don't either. I've heard that he's ambidextrous, can rope either way. Boy, wouldn't that be handy in a branding pen? You know, when at home, they usually have kind of a traps. They built some traps back in World War II when all the men were off to war to make branding easier. They went from throwing them up in a fence corner, holding them up outside, and then when all the men were gone, then they built these traps, these little pins, or big pins, I should say. But usually one side's better for me than the other, And but to be able to rope either way, it'd just be handy as heck.
You'd be bringing one calf every 2 minutes, just about that way.
Begging you to slow down and give them some. Yeah. Well, at these family brandings anymore, and I think it's great. It's given my kids opportunities they'd never have. But everybody gets to rope at one time or another. When I was first starting out, and the guys that were older than I was told me this too, that we never got to drag calves until we had proved ourselves on the ground. And I had one old Arizona cowpuncher, and he was a whale of a good hand. He said, I didn't get to drag any calves of the Brandon Fire till I was about 35 years old. Finally, one day they said, stay on your horse, They didn't let me rope until they'd got them pretty well cleaned up, and there was a few more left, and they were the ones that had been missed and roped at.
And slapped on the hocks a couple of times and learned how to kick the loop off.
Yeah, and we're talking about in the middle of June maybe, and boy, the pressure's on.
Everybody's watching.
Everybody's hungry, and it's quiet, and then you'll hear the cowboys crank up, I'll be home for Christmas, or something like that, And, oh, man, it makes you nervous.
Oh, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You just, everybody's watching.
Pretty soon your hands start to cramp up and you can't throw it right, but you keep trying and you miss even more, so on it goes. Anyway, more with RW in just a little while, and coming up, Baxter Black has a moral lesson and a lecture for a guy who should have known better. Another good song, and then the Rangeland news when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, and I'll be right back after this with a little peek at Potty Mouth.
Your land is a legacy, a challenge from those who tended it before you to build on their foundations. At Corteva Agriscience, we understand what it means to be the stewards of a legacy. We embrace the challenge of building on the foundation of Dow AgroSciences to maintain your trust, to bring new solutions, to help you care for your land. See how we can help build your legacy at rangeandpasture.com.
And for our Canadian listeners, just check corteva.ca, the Canadian website.
If one can get enteritis from eating with dirty hands and lung cancer from breathing dirty air, can one get potty ear from listening to dirty words? And does one get potty mouth from cussing? Well, I think it is an appropriate name for the malady of those who insist on using profane language when it is inappropriate and offensive. Recently, I was in the company of a young professional man. He was handsome and dapper. Two ladies he knew came up, and he introduced us, and he did most of the talking and continued to spice his discourse with cuss words, all of them. Well, the women smiled nervously, and after the ladies left, I asked him about his salty language. I do it all the time, he said. They really love it. He was grinning. Well, I was not old enough to be his father, but I said, no, they don't. I lectured him on mutual respect, decency, chivalry in the cowboy way. He was also a professional man who sounded like a crude, inarticulate buffoon straight off of HBO's newest show, Search for Jerks. Well, he didn't necessarily take offense. I suggested that he scrutinize the expressions of those he was cussing at, and to imagine every time he did it that his breath smelled like bad cheese, or that he had just lost control of his alimentary tract and soiled himself. I'm not on a crusade to improve civility between people. I can cuss in Spanish and English, and I do when I hit my thumb, and I do occasional stag programs, and I've questioned the ancestry of some politicians who incite me. But I have no respect for the George Carlins or Chris Rocks or Dennis Millers of the world. They do not make it a better place because they are coarse and clever and vulgar. And I regret there are so few movies or comedians that I can take my family to see. The foul mouths have taken over the entertainment world. And books are no different. It is now commonplace for a newspaper editor to show no restraint when quoting the potty mouths and the toilet tongues and the salacious, titillating purveyors of oral flatulence. Our civilization charges on in search of the lowest common denominator. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by Corteva Agri-Science. Oh,
Not much can raise your stress level more than a tractor breakdown when you need it most. We've all spent hours on the phone and driving around trying to find the right parts, and that's no fun when you're missing something you need to finish the job. Here's a better way. Just go to bctractorparts.com. That's where you can find about any part for any make of tractor. If you're restoring a vintage tractor or just keeping up the maintenance on the ones you're using, you can have the parts you need in a short time. And you know what? There's some great pictures of tractor restoration projects and much more right there at bctractorparts.com. What? Oh, you don't have internet? Well, try calling Mark at 250-395-0960. The town of Ashcroft, British Columbia, in the sagebrush and desert country along the Fraser River, was one of the first rail shipping points for the caribou cattle drives, and of course every year the Ashcroft Stampede was one of the big events of the summer. Everybody got together for that, and like so many, it just couldn't happen this year. The Stampede got a lot of attention when Alan Moberg wrote and recorded this song, and I sure hope that with all the ads that used it, it paid for at least a few new sets of guitar strings for Alan.
I know an old boy in Spence's Bridge gonna check out his cattle up on the ridge. Then we'll jump in the pickup and drive on down to the big Stampede in Ashcroft Town. Stampede, Ashcroft Town, everybody's coming from miles around. And me and George and old Billy Brown, we're going down to Ashcroft Town, to the big Stampede in Ashcroft Town. Only comes round just once a year, there's no place I'd rather be than there. And if I could, I'd stay a week, 'cause I got a little girl in Old Cache Creek. Stampede, Ashcroft Town, everybody's coming from miles around. And me and George and old Billy Brown, we're going down to Ashcroft Town, to the big Stampede in Ashcroft Town. Barrel riding woman from Saskatoon, she's got old George's head in a swoon. And a big bronc rider of world renown's got us all going down to Ashcroft Town. Let her go, a root-a-toot-toot, he's riding that bull right out of the chute. Count to 8 before he hits the ground, he might be a winner in Ashcroft Town. Stampede, Ashcroft Town, everybody's coming from miles around. And me and George and old Billy Brown, we're going down to Ashcroft Town, to the big Stampede in Ashcroft Town. Gonna wear a hole in my boots tonight, dancing around till broad daylight. But there ain't no time for sleeping in, gotta get back out to the ranch again. Stampede, Ashcroft Town, everybody's coming from miles around. And me and George and old Billy Brown, we're going down to Ashcroft Town, to the big stampede in Ashcroft Town. Stampede, Ashcroft Town, everybody's coming from miles around. And me and George and old Billy Brown, we're going down to Ashcroft Town, to the big stampede in Ashcroft Town. At the big stampede in Ashcroft Town. We're going down to Ashcroft Town.
The Rangeland News from the Spirit of the West, a roundup of issues and events from the world of agriculture.
At the top of page 1, it says, back in June, we were riding through a bunch of cows and calves and wondering if there was any hope for a break-even price on them this fall. But as the summer progressed, things started looking better. And then some of the dire predictions we were hearing didn't sound quite so accurate. And with more about that, here's Gary Crawford.
Friends tell me this is not possible for me.
Returning a little bit back toward normal.
And not happening with me. It is, however, happening in the beef sector, according to USDA Outlook Board Chairman Mark Jekanowski. After the plant closures and slowdowns in the spring, he says slaughter capacity now is just about up to pre-COVID levels.
There is still, however, a backlog of cattle that would have been slaughtered in March or April. That continues to hang over the market today, although the industry has been working through that backlog.
But the damage is done. This year's beef production is projected to be down 0.5% from last year, the first yearly decline in 5 years. For 2021, we could see a 2% bounce back, but it's still hard to predict what's going to happen in the beef market. Too much uncertainty about demand.
But we're in a lot better place now than we were a few months ago.
Steer prices crawling back up. They could average about $107 a hundredweight this year.
And we expect that to continue to increase into 2021.
About a $2.50 increase. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Who wants to be normal anyway, Gary? Well, global meat production is expected to drop for the second year in a row. According to the Food and Agricultural Association, much of the contraction reflects an 8% drop in global pork production, compounded by the decline in beef production in the U.S., as Gary's report said, and as well in Australia. McDonald's Canada is back to using 100% Canadian beef in its burgers after sourcing about 20% of its Canadian restaurant needs from 5 other countries because of supply issues during this pandemic. In April, McDonald's announced that it would source some of its beef from other countries because the pandemic had disrupted the supply chains, and it obtained beef from the U.S., Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and Ireland to supplement its Canadian supply. In a recent announcement, the PRCA, the Pro Rodeo Cowboys Association, says they remain committed to hosting the 2020 Wrangler National Finals Rodeo. There is no question the 2020 Pro Rodeo World Champions will be crowned, they said. There are several options being considered, with fans, without fans, in Las Vegas, outside of Las Vegas. And despite these extenuating circumstances, the PRCA and Las Vegas events want to produce the best NFR ever and provide fans, sponsors, contestants, and members the outstanding experience they've come to expect, the press release said. And at this moment, an event in Las Vegas with fans is not feasible. There is an option to keep the NFR in Vegas without fans, and that's what's being explored, but there are other options being looked at as well, including, for this year only, holding the NFR in a new host city that will allow the PRCA to optimize. And the PRCA expects to announce their final decision about the 30th of September. Got a call from Jordan Dodds, and he says there will be a Top Gun Fall Roundup online horse sale. October 5th is when it starts. That's when you can go online to topgunhorsesales.com to register as a buyer. And the bidding will open 9 a.m. October the 8th, Mountain Standard Time, and stays open until the final horse is sold October the 10th. And you can see all the horses at topgunhorsesales.com or contact Jordan at 403-783-0246. And unfortunately, as the number of active cases continues to rise, we have made the decision to cancel the Concert 83 scheduled for the Lido Theater in Fort St. John, September the 18th and 19th, with my Western Spirit Band, along with Tom Cole and friends. Man, we were really looking forward to that one, and We really have no way of knowing what the situation will be in the spring, but we sure hope it'll improve enough that we can try again then. And Tom and I actually just recorded a little video for YouTube about this announcement, and I think we'll probably do a song together on it. Just go to YouTube and search out Tom Cole Music. There's a special yearling and regular cattle sale at the BC Livestock Co-op in Kamloops. September the 8th, September the 11th is the next regular sale at the Vanderhoof Yards, and then on September the 14th, regular Okanagan Falls sale. You can get all the information. See the sale streaming live at bclivestock.bc.ca. Meanwhile, some good cattle rolling into the Innisfail auction market, and they tell us there seems to be a big demand for good yearlings. Regular sales, of course, every Wednesday, and the special pre-sort calf sales will start later in the fall. Get all the information at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com or give Danny, Mark, and Dwayne a call, 1-800-710-3166. All right, I guess we're down to the final item, and boy, we were just thinking how we sure miss the great times with our Western Spirit Band back when we used to be live on stage, and we sure look forward to the day when we can come your way again. Now, what I really miss are the totally unscripted comments I get from Mike and Jim during our shows sometimes. I never know what they're going to come up with. For example, a while back, between songs, I was talking about the way we were raised, and I said, we have tried to follow those guidelines, and whatever we're doing, we do our best to give 100%. And Uncle Mike steps closer to the microphone and he says, "Oh, really? Even if it's donating blood?" And that's the Rangeland news. Coming up in the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, both hands on one rein or both reins in one hand. Not as simple as it sounds when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. On the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, the question of riding with both reins in one hand or one rein in each hand can lead to a lot of insight when you look really into it. And that's the subject of the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file coming right up. Yeah, okay, Mark, you can go ahead and pull the cord now. Okay, here's an update on the next Spirit of the West cruise, and as you have probably heard, we are making some changes. We have postponed what Billy and I are calling our Farewell Spirit of the West cruise until June of 2021. Okay, Big Rig, a little banjo music, please. We still expect to have just about everything we had planned for this year in place for next year, and Jim and Karen have said, if you'd like to come, then your deposits will be held until then. We're already making plans and preparations for having the whole group start things off June 17th, 2021 with a visit to the McLennan Ranch and a concert with the Western Spirit Band. We'll have coaches to take you all from our place up the beautiful Sun Peaks for a wonderful alpine experience, and then we all head down to Vancouver. A night in the spectacular Fairmont Waterfront Hotel. Something really special planned for the next morning, and then we board Holland America's Connings Dam for a 7-day cruise up the Inside Passage to Alaska. And there'll be a lot of extra events for our group, including the famous White Pass Rail Tour. For everybody currently booked, there will be complimentary drink packages, complimentary specialty dining for one night, and shipboard gratuities will be paid for each guest. We would like to thank all of you who are planning on joining us in July and hope that you can adjust the dates and join us in 2021. We'll keep you informed with the details as they come, and as always, Megan, Jim, and Karen can give you lots of information. 1-800-530-0131.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
All right, kids, cover your ears. Mom and Dad, crank it up. It's time to talk back to school, more specifically back to school savings at Irvine Tack and Western Wear. Great deals on Western Wear with a welcome twist. The latest styles and biggest brand names, jeans, shirts, boots, hoodies, jackets, accessories, and more. So bring the kids to Irvine's, but don't tell them why. And no need to burst their holiday bubble just yet. Exit 305 off Highway 2 by Crossfield.
Canada's largest Western store.
And of course, wherever you are, you can shop online at urbansaddles.ca. One-handed with a neck rein or two-handed riding with direct reins. Which way should I ride my horse, she said. Wow, there's no simple answer, but the deeper you can drill down into this advanced kind of horsemanship that deals with way more than just stop and go and turn left and right, probably the better your horse is going to be. Now, I kept my mouth shut often, but I have watched a lot of riders get frustrated when their horse starts going his way instead of where the rider wants, and I can see it's mostly the way the rider has ridden him and the way he's handled the reins. Now, of course, the less experienced the horse is, the more you will use a direct rein with a snaffle or boselle, if your hands and feel are good enough, and you do that to, of course, lead the horse into a turn with a direct rein. But as you do that, your seat and leg position and the presence of your indirect rein will do a lot to help the horse stay balanced and coordinated through the turn. Now, this is way easier to illustrate than describe, but I think every time that you're guiding your horse into a turn, you're laying the groundwork to develop his potential eventually to be riding properly and comfortably one-handed straight up in the bridle. But that is a long process. Now, my good old mare Cody is pretty much working that way now, the way I like, with a nice swivel shank curb bit and reins, and when we've got to make a smooth turn to, say, head off a yearling, the more attention I pay to her balance, the easier it is to put her in the right position to turn the steer. And it all starts with leg pressure and then indirect or neck rein pressure in the right place and with the right amount and in the right position. And then if I see her start to counterband at all, I will just reach down with the direct rein and add just enough of a touch to get her back in position. Now, it feels really good even in the early stages when you're riding mostly with two hands, when your horse is balanced and makes that turn on his hindquarters and lines out after the critter. But when you can do it right with just one hand on the reins and the least possible pressure, and she just wheels around, that feels so good. And if you listen closely, there'll be a reference to this coming up in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight. I hope you're not sorry you asked. And for Urban Saddles and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. Something else we find that works great for us is that daily feeding our horses get of Hoffman's Horse Ration. And you can find all about it at hoffmanshorseproducts.com. The way the Canada Revenue Agency deals with ranchers and farmers has changed a lot in the last few years, and the financial decisions we make today can have a long-lasting impact on our bottom line far into the future. It really helps to have a trusted professional who really understands your situation to guide you with all your accounting requirements and your tax preparation. Having an accountant who knows the difference between a Hereford and a heifer, what a slick and backgrounding are, and that Alfalfa and Timothy are not just names from a storybook, really helps. Kathy McMillan of PMT Chartered Professional Accountants understands the intricacies of specialized programs like Agri-Stability and Agri-Invest. She understands the demands on your time and can help you spend more time doing your job and less time dealing with endless piles of paperwork. See PMTaccountants.com or call toll-free 877-383-8081. Whenever Matt Johnson comes down from Wells Gray to shoe our horses, well, he's bent down underneath one of them. We are often talking about one of three subjects: horses, good guitars, and cowboy music or Western history, something Matt is kind of an expert on too. And I wish in a way he had more time to write more great songs as he's done, just as long as he still has time to do our ponies. Here's one he wrote about the early history of the East and the West.
They landed in New York City and headed for the western sky, over to St. Louis, the gateway to the west. Up the muddy water to sail across the prairie, see the forefathers and mothers of folks like you and me. We are the sons and the daughters from the children of a new frontier. I will remember you as I'm a child of your pioneer dreams. I think about your trials and tribulations. You left it all behind just for a dream, for a rumor of a promised land that you ain't never seen. Still you kept your wagons rolling across that endless prairie sea. You must have handed the reins to the Lord above, saying, Lord, would you deliver me? We are the sons and the daughters from the children of the new frontier. I will remember you as I'm a child of your pioneer dreams. Do 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 do. You fought the trail with an iron will, then forged a life with your hands, a hammer and an anvil, a woman and a man. Now the Oregon Trail is paved with asphalt, and your old homestead's mostly gone, but you still linger in the faces here and the names of everyone. We are the sons and the daughters from the children of a new frontier. I will remember you as I'm a child of your pioneer dreams. I'm a child of your pioneer dreams. We're children of your pioneer dreams.
Well, I've seen Matt work with a lot of tough horses, and he's a darn good hand. And I have been told by folks who've ridden with R.W. Hampton that he's a top hand as well, even though he's pretty modest about it.
You know, I never did consider myself a good cowboy. I think I was, no, let me say this. I never did consider myself a great cowboy. I think I was a good cowboy, but one of the greatest achievements in my life was to be considered one of their own, you know. And that was as good as it got for me.
You know, that is more of an honor, I think, than any award for whatever, broadcasting or entertainment a guy could get.
It is, and I've heard the conversation before, you know, be two old cowboys, and we'd be talking about people they knew. So, well, did old Jim ever make a cowboy? They say, no, you know what, he just never did make a cowboy. Or they said, did old Bobby ever make a cowboy? Yeah, Bobby made a cowboy. And you know what? You can cowboy for years and not be called a cowboy just because maybe your heart wasn't in it. I've known kids that were raised on a ranch and their heart wasn't in it. And I've known some old kid from town that wanted it more than anything else in the world and got bucked off and got his butt chewings and took them with a smile and learned from them, and he made a cowboy, you know. And
there are some outstanding hands that came. Well, you came from not a ranch raised background yourself.
Yeah, I did. That's just something I was raised north of the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area, and always had a horse and participated in high school rodeo. But when I was about 16, I had an opportunity to work on a ranch in the summer, and I worked the next 2 summers after that. And for a while, Hugh, that's all I wanted to do or thought I would ever do was just cowboy, punch cows, you know. And I'm so glad I got to do it, and I'm so pleased that I stuck with it long enough for real cowboys to call me a cowboy. And that's, like you say, that's worth more than gold and worth more than any kind of plaque or award you could ever get. Yeah, well, I'm fortunate also, yeah, because I went from drawing a wage on a ranch to drawing a check playing Western music for folks, you know, and well, I'm just blessed beyond them. Probably next to you, the richest man in the world, but not on account of our bank accounts, you know.
That kind of describes it, but my goodness, it's Our Dub, I want to thank you so much for making this appearance on the Spirit of the West again. It's always so good to visit with you, and all the best to you and Lisa and your growing family, and I hope our trails cross again real soon.
Well, I hope and pray that they do too, Hugh, and I just love that country that where you live and the people that are up there, and we've got a lot of fans up there and memories, and that was a great time for my wife and I.
Okay, and coming up in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight.
He'll be in bullhide bat wings, 'cause chinks don't protect you low. And those California roweled spurs ain't on his heels for show.
That, as well as our classic Western song, When the Spirit of the West, continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. The state of Wyoming has inspired, I think, probably more beautiful Western music than almost anywhere else. Texans might not agree, but this week's Western classic was recorded first by the Sons of the Pioneers in 1936, and it was featured a year later in a Hopalong Cassidy movie of the same name. Now, I think this is one of the nicest versions of all of the Hills of Old Wyoming from Bob Wagner, who sings all the parts and plays all the instruments.
Let me ride, let me ride on the trail in the hills of old Wyoming, where the coyotes wail in the gloaming. For it's there that my heart's at home. For it's there that my heart's at home. In the night, in the night, let me rest. Let me rest with a blue sky for my ceiling, till the wind's lullaby comes a-stealing from the hills where my heart's at home. Wake with the song, wake with the sun, saddles to mend, cattle to tend, plenty to be done. Let me live, let me live on the range, where a man has room to roam in and dream of his love in the gloaming, in the hills of old Wyoming, in the hills of old Wyoming, Wyoming.
Wow. Gifted with a wonderful voice, incredible range, and he's also a wonderful Western artist. His paintings are on Lean & Tree products and calendars and covers everywhere. Now it's Jim Fox in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight with Echoes of the Past.
You know, some people are said to be ahead of their time. There's others that are an echo of the past. You'll see 'em there at Brandon's, or when roundup time is nigh. He'll be in town to team pen, or when stampede banners fly. Now he still rides a neck-reined horse, even though it ain't what's in, 'cause he knows with 2 hands on the reins, you just can't make your loop spin. He'll be in bull-hide bat wings, 'cause chinks don't protect you low, and those California roweled spurs ain't on his heels for show. A beat-up, rolled-down, flat-crowned hat with feather, band, and pin. Well, next to the style of today, somehow he don't fit in. Now he may not be the best top hand, but he does his share of work. He can turn his hand to any job, and he sure ain't one to shirk. Now the boys all count him as a friend, but he's different than the rest. 100 years of cowboy pride beats strong within his chest. Now his grandpa always told him, tie hard to the old ways and ride a committee saddle. They'll both last you all your days. An enigma, a conundrum, a memory born to last, a shadow from the future, or an echo of the past.
Well, thank you so much for riding along this week, and I sure hope you can meet us right back here next week at the same time. And thanks again to the official Spirit of the West support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. And you know, if you enjoy this program, I know you'll love Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. And the new issue has been out for a week or two, and boy, it's just terrific. You can subscribe online at cowboycountrymagazine.com. And I hope you can check out our YouTube and podcast versions. The links at our website, hugh-mclennan.com. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.